We are very, very fortunate today to have with us Trevor Beck. One of the reasons we're fortunate to have him is a lot of the experience that we get on best places in the world to retire is from people who have been living in the various places that we have on our site, Panama, Mexico, Nicaragua, Belize, Portugal, for quite some time. The advantage that we have today is Trevor Beck is new to Panama, and in his words, he's a newbie. And in addition, Trevor is from the what I would call the far north area, uh, Canada, Edmonton, Edmonton to be precise. So Trevor has some experiences he'd like to share with us, not only relative to the weather, but relative to the cultural differences and really what you could expect when you go to a place, in this case to Boquete, Panama, when you've never been there before and you haven't had your experiences tainted by, let's say, being there a couple, 2, 3 months. So once again, we're very happy to have Trevor. And Trevor, thank you very much for taking the time and for joining us and for being willing to share your experiences with the visitors to best places.
Not a problem, Chuck. So the way this kind of turned out is I'm like a lot of people looking towards the future and looking at a place to retire. And Boquete is one of the places in Panama City that's been highlighted as a great place for expats. So to start off, my trip from Edmonton takes about, well, I was going to say 9 hours, but it takes about 9 hours, 10 hours just to get to Panama City. So Edmonton to Houston, quickly run out of the plane, grab the next one, Houston to Panama City, an overnight in the hotel, and then next morning a 1-hour flight from Panama City to David. David is in the lower part of the Chiriquí county area, province. Sorry, Chiriquí province. From David, it's about a 45-minute up to Boquete. Boquete is a large area in a valley. There's actually a couple of different parts of Boquete. There's the upper and the lower part. So the upper part is at the very top of the valley, and then you've got the whole valley area of the rest of Boquete. Right now it's their summer in Panama, and it's very, very, very windy. There were times where wind gusts were going up to 50, 60 miles an hour. So it's a very windy period of time, especially if you're up in the upper part of Boquete. When you go down into the valley, you still get a lot of the winds and stuff, but maybe not quite as much. Boquete is a small town, and with a lot of people that are traveling through there because of all the new expats that are developing in there. There are some communities already established, so they're almost like a resort where you have a golf course and you've got condos you can get access to and stuff like that. There are also people who are going in buying old Panamanian homes and upgrading them for themselves to American standards, as they refer to it. And there are some people that are doing new builds. So depending on what you want to do, how much money you want to spend, there's all sorts of different options. For me, when I was going through, I was staying at a bed and breakfast in the downtown area of Boquete. So my first impressions is it's a small town. Can be very busy, but it's very quaint. It reminded me of a small town on Vancouver Island that I had been to. So there's all these small little shops, people seem to know each other, that kind of thing. Depending on what parts of the place you go to, people may or may not speak a lot of English. If it's a high tourist place, like there was a couple of restaurants that we frequented, a lot of the people understood the basics of English. However, at one point I had to go into a pharmacy to get some medicine, and they didn't speak any English whatsoever. So one thing I can recommend is there's a great app called Google Translate. When you get to Boquete, make sure you get a data plan for your phone and get access to this app, because it's what allows you to do is you speak into your phone. The phone will then take your English, translate it to Spanish, and speak Spanish to the other person. The other person can then speak Spanish. It translates it into English. So there were times where I had to communicate with people I didn't have anyway, but using Google Translate, and it actually worked fairly well. It's not an exact translation, it's not like a true Babelfish kind of thing, but it will get you across. And when I was trying to get medicine for a sore throat and stuffy nose and all that, I just basically plugged that in, and the pharmacist was able to fill that out. So really recommend that as an option. Small town, its temperature ranges between 18 to about 25, 27 degrees Celsius, which I think runs around 70 to 85 Fahrenheit. Don't quote me on the Fahrenheit stuff. But I mean, as a Canadian who likes his cool weather, it got very warm in the summertime, or at the end of the day in the heat. What's really cool about this time of year is that they have what's called the Baja, I think Baja Rete is what it is, Baja Rete. And what that is a cloud that comes in, and it's not a rain shower, it's not a fog, but it's a mist. So for the Californians out there, you know, when you have those misting stations, imagine nature's way of doing that. It just basically sprays this mist on you that cools you off and then disappears within seconds. So it's a nice way that when those come in during the later part of the afternoon, start around 1 o'clock to maybe 3 o'clock, that will come in. And it's just a nice way to cool you off. Now, from what I understand when I talk to people, there's a couple of different seasons. Right now we're in the summer season, and then they have what's called a rainy season. Now, you know, from Canada and experiencing Vancouver, which has a rainy season for months, you know, 24/7, it might rain for like a week straight, on and off. That's what I would picture. But in Boquete, the rainy season basically means it's sunny in the morning, maybe around 12, 1 o'clock it starts to cloud up. It'll rain for 2 hours, maybe, and then around 4 or 5 the sun comes out again. So it's not rainy season as in it's rains day and night. So it's kind of, as somebody who still needs to have some sunshine, you're still going to get it in the morning, you'll still get it at the end of the day, you just might have during the middle that it's going to rain. And I understand sometimes it can torrentially downpour, major flooding and all that stuff happens during that rainy season. But in the morning, in the day, end of the day, it's going to be nice out. Some of the things that people need to understand is that Boquete, like a lot of places in Panama, is still developing their services. And by services, I mean their internet, their electricity, and their water. So in Boquete, there are some different areas around this valley where they are having different challenges. So, for example, some areas are having, well, Panama, the whole country is having a water shortage right now. And that affects some of the different areas in Boquete as well. So depending if you're up on the side of a hill and what area you're in, you may get good water. Some areas may not be getting good water, which means that they might lose their water for 1 or 2 days. So it's important that you have some backup sources. Power can go out at any time. And I was there during a power outage, and as someone who's used to having lights on the street lights, when it goes out, it is pitch black, and you cannot see anything. And that's important to understand, that you need to make sure that you have some kind of comfortable backup system, whether it's candles or what have you. Now, I understand the power outages usually can last 20 minutes up to 4 hours. It's not uncommon. When I was staying at the bed and breakfast, they actually have a backup generator, which a lot of individuals will have. So, but within 15 seconds, or say within 8 seconds, I've got power back on in our bed and breakfast. But the rest of the town in the area that we were at was still without power for another 20 minutes. So that's kind of interesting when you're out driving around and what few lights they have on their roads goes out and they're gone. You're in pitch black darkness and you just have your headlights. Driving is interesting at night because a lot of the Panamanian, I think the Aboriginals, the locals, they are out walking. I suspect it's because they may not have TV or electricity, and they have it's still hot in their houses, so they're out waiting for it to kind of cool down a bit before they go back in. So when you're going through windy roads, unlike when you're going through Vancouver or Victoria or whatever, you can't just be zooming along at the corners because they're very small roads, they're very tight turns, and there's people and animals walking all over the place. So it's important to be aware of that. And I know people that I've talked to, they say that at night they don't drive. So at 7 o'clock when it's night out, they're staying in their houses. They're not going to get out and drive. I mentioned that it's in a valley, Boquete. So there's different areas, has different people living in it, both locally as well as expats. So you're going to have some really nice areas, and right beside a really nice, what we would call in North America, like probably a $500,000 house, you might have that, and then right next to it might be somebody who's living in a cider block built house with just a piece of aluminum on top. So there is very much a dichotomy of very well-off and very poor people. Boquete main source of employment for a lot of the locals is the coffee fields. The problem, though, is that a lot of these coffee pickers who've been there for years are content to get the same amount of money that their grandfather got. They consider themselves lucky. And in some ways, they're kind of being taken advantage of. There's a lot of coffee growers that are making movements to try and bring up their level of life. What's the word I want? Life. Anyways,
Standard of living.
that thing, standard of living. Thank you. Yes, they're trying to bring up their standard of living. So there's a lot of people are making moves to do that, but there's still a lot of people that just are living from hand to mouth. As part of that, they raise chickens. So you will hear chickens and roosters all the time. They love their chickens and roosters. They also love their dogs for company and stuff like that. So even when I was in town, in this small town, right across the street were 2 or 3 roosters that love to argue. And roosters don't start crowing at the crack of dawn. They start crowing at 2:30 in the morning. And so when they get going, there's this competition that goes on, and then at some point the dogs jump in. So it might be 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and there's this big argument between these animals going on that you have to get used to. It is just, they're everywhere. But there's also other things that are everywhere too. I mean, they have beautiful birds. I mean, hummingbirds. There's like 3 species of hummingbirds that are down there that are really cool to watch. So there's lots of other life that you can take joy in, as opposed to the nightlife of those animals. We rented a car. If you do rent a car, don't get the small economy car. I thought I was getting a small one. They ended up giving us an economy car. We had I think it's called a Kia Picanto. It's basically a sewing machine for an engine. And when you're going through some of these hills, I had to shift into first gear and could barely get up the hill with my wife and I in the car. So make sure you get a mid-sized car so that you can get up the hills, so that you can actually pass people when you need to. Yeah, it's worth the extra 10 or 20 bucks, whatever it is. But if you need to, you can live in Boquete and actually get around using their transportation. A lot of Panamanians just can't afford the house or afford cars and that. So their system is actually pretty impressive. You'll be driving down the highway and you'll see these they look like concrete bunkers. But that's where they'll wait for the buses. And they have buses going through all of Boquete. There's buses that run from Boquete to David, which is the 2nd largest city in Panama. So you can use the transportation system locally. If you're in Boquete town proper, you can walk everywhere. Now, it's interesting because I talked to people and they said, oh yeah, I walk from here to here, and I would think, wow, I have to drive that. There's no way I could walk that. Walking 5 miles or 10 miles for them is very common. So they think nothing about walking that. And if you're looking for a way to get healthy and stuff, walking's the way to do it. So you don't need to worry about a car or insurance if you're planning on living in Boquete. Some of the recommendations that people gave us, and I would also like to pass that on, is if you think you're going to go and live in that place or an area, rent for a year, especially in Boquete, because as I mentioned, there's all these microclimates where you're going to have rain up here and it'll be sunny down here, it'll be cloudy over here, it'll be windy over here. To find out exactly what your temperature ranges that you like, and those living conditions and the drive to and from an area. Because one area is a windy road, because remember it's in a valley, so the road kind of goes in a big circle coming back to Boquete. Do you want to do all that driving every time you want to go for groceries and stuff? Fresh fruit, you'll find stands all over the place where people will sell fruit right along the roadside. Because again, a lot of these people, when they're walking home or driving home, they'll get off the bus. They don't have a grocery market. They don't have a convenience store quite often in a lot of these locations. So they just pick up fresh fruit and vegetables right there at the bus location. And I mean, I love pineapple. They have some awesome pineapple that we've been just living on for the last couple of weeks. So really recommend that you get a chance to rent and try looking at all those fresh fruit options and stuff. On Tuesdays, they have a market where everyone gets together. All the expats come together. All the local vendors come together, and you can buy all sorts of different foods, different services, jewelry, all that kind of stuff, just like any other market you would find. But that's the big kind of social gathering that people have, is that Tuesday market. And to get involved is pretty easy, because what a lot of people do is they get involved in volunteer opportunities, and there's lots of volunteer opportunities in Boquete, and that's how you meet people, in addition to the market. So for people looking, will I be able to fit in? Is it social and stuff like that? Yeah, you have to put yourself out there, just like anything else, but the opportunities are there, and they are easy to get along with. Chuck, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me while I'm...
Yeah, a couple things. Now, we have a huge advantage being that you are giving us your impressions, your immediate impressions. And this is not after dealing with these things after a while. And every place one goes, whether it's a different place within Canada or with the United States, there's going to be different ways of living. There's going to be different challenges. So in Boquete, you mentioned the roosters and the dogs, which seem to be having an argument. And by the way, did you ever find out what that argument was about? And was it resolved?
I know it was never resolved, because the next night it just started up again.
So they're constantly arguing.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. So perhaps they should have had a Balboa, a
Ah,
beer that would have maybe eased it a little. So the question that I have is, so you mentioned some of these things which are different than what you're used to and
yep.
present challenges, such as the electricity going off and the roosters and the dogs and so forth. Do you think that would continue to be an irritant 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, multiple years down the road living there? And are the people, do the people seem to be as put out by it, or do they just tend to sort of get used to it? What's your experience, or what do you suspect, given the people you've talked to?
Yeah, given to, I mean, the locals all get used to it. I'm sorry, not locals. The expats, the new people coming in, they all get used to it, and I'm sure that I would get used to it as well. One of the things we had discussed earlier was temperature. Coming from Canada, I like my cool temperatures at night. So like I have air conditioning running to bring the temperature down as near winter conditions as I can. But in Boquete, it does cool down to about 18 degrees. And if you have a nice airflow coming through the house, that would be perfect. Like I said, there's a number of times I actually was tempted to go sleep on the outdoor couches, because that to me was the perfect temperature. But it's if you're for me, that's a big thing, is the temperature range. But I'm sure that I could get used to it. My wife and I always talk about, it's so hot. Oh yeah, you'll acclimatize, no problem. And everyone does, and you hear that happen a lot. So I imagine that's just a matter of time. But I mean, even the dogs barking and stuff like that, when you take a look at the fact that in the morning you can get up and you can have breakfast or have a meeting out on your deck. And I mean, I didn't see any bugs when I was in Boquete. Didn't see any bugs. No mosquitoes, no flies, none of that kind of stuff. When you look at those kind of advantages, barking dogs, I'll get used to that. No bugs, no mosquitoes and stuff like that. I mean, that's awesome. Winds, they have major winds there. Again, you'd have to get used to them, but everyone else seems to like, oh yeah, it's windy, whatever. You should have seen it last year. You hear stuff like that all the time, and I'm thinking, wow, you've got gusts of 50 miles an hour here, and you're telling me I should have seen last year, and this doesn't bother you? Those are just things that anyone's going to have to get used to when they go into a new area. I think if you keep in mind that Panama is growing, I mean, 12 years ago or whatever it was, it was a wholly different place, right? In fact, Boquete 12 years ago, people were still riding into town on their horseback and tying up at a hitching rail somewhere. So that's 12 years, and now it's cars all over the place. As you see this development and understand stuff is still being developed, and expect, the power is going to go out. So what? So what if it does? I mean, like I said, your temperature ranges are between 18 and 20, 25, 28. You're not going to die in that. Whereas from Edmonton, if it's wintertime and the power goes out and it's minus 30 or 40, I have a concern right away that I need to get heat in my house, because my pipes are going to freeze, water lines are going to be bursting, and I'm going to be freezing. So the idea of power going out in Boquete was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Freaky, because I'm not used to this darkness, but other than that, I'll get used to it.
Right. So tell me, you're an extremely social guy, very friendly guy. outgoing, um, I will say even community oriented. You had a chance, I guess, to sort of meet people who have been there for a while. What were your impressions of sort of the overall community, the people who you met? Um, you talked a little bit about this before, but what it would be like to sort of fit into the community or not? Are they welcoming? What would a typical day be like? That type of thing.
Right. Okay. There's a newsletter, electronic newsletter called Boquete News that you can subscribe to, and so there's lots of information that they publish there to expats in the area about activities that are going on. So everything from so and so is going to be doing a salsa dance lesson here to there's the theater activity happening here to the dog and cat. I call it Dog and Cat Club. There's actually a group of what they're doing because again they have dogs running around all over the place. There's a lot of wild, and by wild dogs I mean they're just running throughout the town at different times. So they actually get these dogs and they neuter them, spay them, so that that they're not going to have thousands and thousands more dogs running around the place. And so there's a lot of people doing that. There's a lot of people trying to find homes for these animals and stuff. So there's lots socially. I mean, it's easy to get involved. And the expats that are in the area, they want to improve conditions. So there are people who are helping out with the ensuring that we can the people who are doing the coffee plantation picking and stuff, helping bring their standard of living up. There's people involved in all different projects, so that's easy to do. And socially, everyone's very friendly. Everyone's very happy to share their experiences and stuff, because a lot of them have made homes here and they're willing to say, hey, this is a great place to come and live, and they're very happy to share that experience and introduce you to what's possible in the area.
Mm-hmm. So, what was your? Tell me your wife's name. I'm sorry.
Shelley.
Shelley. Can you relate anything? What was her view of things? Did she have any views that maybe a woman would be more interested in?
Oh, I never asked her that. Yeah, I really can't say too much. I mean, we both talked a lot about this because, again, we're looking at the retirement opportunity. She really likes Boquete. She really likes that, and she could see herself retiring there. It's not a big city. It doesn't have supermarkets and stuff like that. There's a lot of little shops, small independent grocers, I guess you would call it. But I mean, by independent grocers, it doesn't mean you have like the major chains and stuff like that. It's just somebody who's ordered a bunch of stuff from other sources and stocked their shelves. So I mean, she can see herself living there, and as far as where, we're not sure yet, and we're not sure if Boquete is the answer yet. We're still exploring. But as far as a woman, I mean, I don't think there was. I mean, she never mentioned anything that would make me say, "Huh, that's interesting perspective of a woman."
Well, a lot of times, okay, let's move sort of off these sort of gender roles, but let's ask you about safety. How did you feel? You're not going to be happy in any place where you don't feel safe. How did you feel relative to your safety, and how did Shelley feel relative to her safety?
I don't think safety was ever an issue, and everyone I've talked to says it's really not an issue. Is there bad eggs? Yes, there has been some problems, and they are addressing it with both the local police and as well as with the expat communities and stuff like that. But I mean, again, it's a small town, and it's a very safe community because people are watching out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
We had no problem feeling, we had no problem feeling safe, and it's not something that, as Canadians from where we're at. I mean, we don't have gun problems and stuff like that because guns aren't really allowed in the way they are in parts of America. So we don't really worry about stuff like that. So I don't think there was any, again, there was no concerns about safety. I mean, we weren't out 10, 11 o'clock at night. We weren't out at that time of night. It's pitch black and stuff. And quite frankly, I wanted to get back to my cool area that I could find. But I mean, it's beautiful out there to go for a nice walk. The only things that you have to be careful of, sidewalks aren't beautifully shaped and shaven. They're sidewalks from 20 years ago, so they're crumbling, they're breaking down, they haven't been fixed properly. I tend to twist my ankle a lot because I'm always looking around and then put my foot into a hole or something like that. So those are the kind of things that I have to be aware of. But other than that, for safety reasons, there's really not. The people are really nice.
What do you think would be if you were to move there? What do you think would be your and Shelley's biggest challenges?
Well, for me, I will say, because I do stuff on the internet, having a good internet connection that I don't have to share. It seemed to me about 7 o'clock at night, between 7 and 9, the internet access just kind of went really slow. And it's kind of like the old days of when we were all to be on cable, where if 5 people are sharing the same cable line, it seemed like the whole internet kind of slowed right down. It seemed like that particular time, everything just kind of slowed down because we're all using it. As I mentioned, the English, Spanish, and I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, if I was to try and build up a new place in that, the challenges are going to be, not speaking the language, and making sure I found someone who did speak the language and who could represent me well in my dealings with contractors, in my dealings with the Spanish people, making sure that the land that I bought was a titled piece of land that someone else owned, had title to, and was able to bring the title properly over to me. Those would be probably the biggest challenges.
All right, and how would you, if you were to imagine yourself there, let's say when you retire, you and Shelley, what do you think your typical day would be like? How would you describe your typical day?
Oh. Well, get up in the morning and go outside and sit on a deck somewhere. The bed and breakfast that we stayed at had this beautiful area for like all the meals were done outside
Mm-hmm.
for breakfast. So, and it was covered. I mean, it's the California life. There's a TV on the wall outside. There's couches outside. We don't have that kind of lifestyle in the winter areas of Canada. But I mean, to have that year round, you're sitting there and just be able to read, to surf the internet, do whatever you need to do, and do that outside. That to me is like a really great way to start the day. What would I do after that? Well, go for a walk for sure, because I mean that's the whole idea, is to get healthy, right? Eating healthy food, going into town and visiting with people. Because, like as you mentioned, I'm a pretty social guy. Probably during the middle of the day when it gets too hot, I would probably find shelter somewhere, in air conditioned, hang out there for a few hours, and then at nighttime, when it got cool again, just go out again and walk around.
Yeah. So are there things to do there? It sounds like it's a small town, so obviously there's going to be limited um, educational activities and
Well,
limited entertainment activities.
yeah,
So would that limit you in it? So let's forget about the education. Let's forget that I said that. Let's just go to the entertainment part. Are there things to do? Is it, or just a boring place where you just wake up and just enjoy the physical beauty of the place and the people are very nice, but that's pretty much it.
I hate. I don't want to be painting. This is based totally on my 1 week there. Okay,
Yes.
so I don't want to paint it because I don't know it. I know that they have a theater group that puts on performances every so often. I know they bring, entertainment into the different restaurants and stuff, so that they have musicians coming in. We were lucky; we were there during the 10th Boquete Blues and Jazz Festival, which was really cool. They had some really neat stuff going on, some nice music on. They had activities going on in town. So I assume that they have, and from what I've read, they have musicians come in and perform at these different places. Boquete is actually being marketed right now as a walking trail, eco-friendly place. There's a lot of eco-friendly things going on. So there are within a short drive, you can do zip lining, you can do whitewater rafting, you can do some fishing in that. You're about an hour and a half south to the ocean on one way. You're 3 hours north to Boca del Toro, which is the pristine picture we all see of the grass huts on the water kind of stuff. So that location's there. But they're doing a lot of eco stuff. So there's actually, I know that there's a monkey sanctuary, there's an animal sanctuary. There's a lot of trails and hiking. It's becoming quite that. A lot of people travel there for hiking. We saw some people. There's a short, maybe 80-foot cliff where people were doing some scaling it, climbing it, that kind of stuff with ropes and that. So there's a lot of eco stuff that people can do there if they're interested in that. But there's not a movie theater. There's a pool hall there. That's pretty much all that I can recall, other than restaurants, really.
Mhm. Did you spend any time in David? Were you able to see what that's like at all?
No, no, we basically kind of drove in and drove out.
Okay, because that's the place where they would have the movie theaters
Yes.
and the other stuff. Um, I can't really think of anything else. Anything that sort of what we didn't spend a lot of time with, and people are always describing Boquete as being. They're always talking about the what it looks like and what it's sort of the foliage and so forth. If you could sort of describe the environment when you look out your window, what do you see? When you take a walk, what do you see? That type of stuff.
Well, and that's actually kind of interesting because it depends on where in Boquete. Because I mentioned there's an area up top of the valley and there's an area down below in the valley. At the very top of the valley, it's dry. It looks like parts of Phoenix where it's just very dry. Everything's just brush is all dried up. But when you get inside the valley, it's very lush because of the water and the rains and stuff like that, and the Baja there's like 5 different types of palm trees in there. I mean, there's coconuts, there's bananas, there's guava, there's lemon. You can find those all over the place. It's very lush inside the valley itself.
Hmm. Uh, that would be quite contrast life, if you would. And I guess it depends on the seasons because life in Edmonton is going to be different depending on the seasons. And we'll learn a little bit about Edmonton with this question. So contrast what your life would be like in retirement in Edmonton versus what it would be like in Boquete.
Well, see, the difference is, I mean, it's really tough to say because, like I said, we have extremes in Edmonton for our weather. Because, I mean, even, it's funny, I mean, our weather is just kind of wonky the last little while, but I was talking with my mom while I was in Boquete, and on one day it was minus 15 degrees Celsius, and 2 days later it was plus 15 degrees Celsius. So there are certain times of the year where the weather just goes zing, zang, back and forth. Then, we have summers where we can get up to 35, 37 Celsius above. And then our winters can go down to, and this is extreme, but I mean, it can go down to 40 degrees below. Usually, we're usually in there around the 30, 35 is the lowest we go. But I mean, it'll dip down to 40 sometimes. And then wind chill factor and everything else. So when it's that cold, I'm getting home and I'm staying inside beside my fireplace. When it's that 37 hot, I'm at home in my air conditioning. When it's in between, I'll get out and walk around. I guess movie theaters and that kind of stuff don't play as big of a role as they used to be when you've got iTunes and Netflix and stuff like that. So you can do a lot of entertainment at home. But I guess it's just a matter of how you want to be involved in your community and what kind of activities you like to do. And it's really kind of hard to compare the two. I don't think you're going to have as many educational as well as entertainment opportunities in a small town in Boquete, because it is a small town, whereas Edmonton is, a large city still.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, very well. That's it for me. Unless is there anything else we should?
No, I think that covers it. If anyone's got any questions, by all means, you can submit them through the website. Best places in the world to retire, and Chuck will make sure to forward them on to me, and I can answer them through the website. But other than that, that's it.
Okay, so we want to very much thank Trevor Beck for taking time out, and I want to make very clear that Trevor is reporting direct from Panama at this point. So he's taking time out from his vacation to be with us. He's taking time away from his wife, who I'm sure is waiting for him at this very moment. So thank you very much for sharing with us and letting us know your impressions. As we said, first time in Boquete. Thank you, Trevor.
Not a problem. See you, Chuck.
Bye.